Welcome and thank you for participating in the public workshop for demonstration of the draft electronic mapping tool that we refer to as the mapping tool during this workshop for the draft statewide suction dredge mining NPDES permit. I'm Afruz Farsimadan, the program manager for statewide NPDES permitting, and I will be your facilitator for today. We want to extend a warm welcome and thank each of you for finding a way to join us virtually. As we start this public workshop, I would like to introduce our program staff. We have Diana Messina, the Surface Water Permitting Section Chief. Diana will be monitoring the Zoom chat box during the workshop and will call on staff to answer your questions. We have Brian Mallory Jones, our Chief Counsel, Renan Hauregi, the lead permit writer. Walter Mobley is the staff demonstrating the online mapping tool and answering questions on the mapping tool. And behind the scenes, we have Gorgagan Chand, Steve Chung, Ella Golovi, Paul Levy, and our Cali, PA webcasting staff. They are all working hard to make sure this workshop is running smoothly. We are hosting this meeting virtually from Sacramento. We welcome and thank you for joining us today. We are meeting during a challenging time and appreciate your participation while many people are concurrently dealing with continued impacts of this global pandemic on our communities. The mission of the water boards is to preserve, enhance, and restore California's water resources for the benefit of present and future generations. We acknowledge the groups who have and who continue to experience economic, environmental, and social disadvantages, and whose daily lives are impacted by racism and injustices. The work our board conducts is to strengthen the empowerment of community voices, including our indigenous communities, as we work together to provide clean, safe, affordable water to all Californians. Before Walter starts her demonstration of the draft mapping tool, I will provide a quick background on this permitting process. The State Water Board released the draft NPDES permit for suction dredge mining discharges last May. The State Water Board held a public hearing on August 5th to receive oral comments on the permit. During the public hearing, a lot of interested parties requested high-resolution maps corresponding with the requirements of the draft permit. The State Water Board suspended the previously established public comment due date and directed staff to develop high-resolution maps. Last fall, staff developed a draft interactive mapping tool for guidance purposes to assist interested parties locate areas that the draft permit allows suction dredge mining. On December 30th, the State Water Board issued an updated public notice announcing the availability of the draft mapping tool to the public and the 2 public workshops to demonstrate the mapping tool. The public notice also announced the public comment due date of March 8 and provided instructions on how to submit written comments. The purpose of today's workshop is to demonstrate to interested parties the draft suction dredge mining mapping tool and provide an opportunity for you to ask questions regarding how to use the mapping tool. We encourage you to provide your feedback on how we can improve this tool. You can find a link to the mapping tool and the user guide on our suction dredge mining program webpage, which is, the link is provided on this slide. The focus of today's workshop is the draft mapping tool. We will try our best to answer your questions on how to use the tool, and we will listen to your comments on how to improve this draft tool. This workshop is not for commenting on the draft suction dredge mining permit requirements. If you would like your comments and concerns on the draft permit or the draft mapping tool to be included in the administrative proceedings for this permitting process, please submit your written comments. You have until noon on March 8th of this year to provide your written comments. Any comments provided within time frame of the public comment period and any oral comments shared during the August 5th hearing will be considered. Here are some guidelines and logistics for today's workshop. The workshop is being recorded and webcast. Our discussion today is for informational purposes only. No written responses to comments will be provided and no formal actions will be taken. We will try our best to respond to all of your questions. This PowerPoint presentation and the recording of the workshop will be posted on the Suction Dredge Mining Program webpage. There are two options for joining this workshop. Option 1 is the Cali, PA webcast, which is for viewing and listening in only. Option 2 is the Zoom meeting, which is interactive and you can ask questions and provide feedback during the workshop. If you're not planning to ask questions or provide feedback, we ask that you view the webcast at video.calipa.ca.gov. For those of you who registered in advance for the Zoom meeting, we will admit you to the meeting, but you will be on mute until it is your turn to speak. If you have technical issues anytime during this workshop, please send an email to Suction Dredge Mining npdes@waterboards.ca.gov and we will help you troubleshoot. This slide provides instructions on how to submit your questions and comments. Please utilize the Zoom chat feature to submit your questions or feedback. When you submit your question or feedback, please indicate if you like us to read your question or you prefer to ask your question or provide feedback yourself. We will unmute you when it is your turn to speak if you chose to ask your question yourself. Once you have asked your question and received an answer, you will be muted. Again, for technical issues, send an email to Suction Dredge Mining npdes@waterboards.ca.gov. This is the agenda for today's workshop. In the next slide, I will give you a quick update on the continuation of the public permitting process. After that, Walter will demonstrate the mapping tool. We will take a quick break after the demonstration and continue with the question and comment session when we come back from the break. We will end the workshop with the next steps for this permitting process. On August 5th of last year, the State Water Board held a public hearing to receive oral comments for this draft permit. March 8th is the end of the public comment period. After the public comment period closes, we will review all comments received and provide written responses. We will consider all oral comments submitted during the August 5th board hearing, as well as written comments received by the public comment due date. We may modify the draft permit based on the comments we receive. The State Water Board will consider the final draft permit for adoption in a future board hearing. We anticipate that will be in 2021. Now I would like to introduce Walter Mobley, who will be leading us through the mapping tool demonstration. Walter is a water resource control engineer in the Division of Water Quality. She is the contact person if you have any questions on how to use the mapping tool. If at any time during Walter's demonstration you will have a question about a feature of the mapping tool, please type in your question in the chat box. Diana will read your question for Walter to answer. Walter, take it away.
Thank you, Bruce. Hello, everyone. And again, my name is Walter Mobley, and I will be demonstrating how to use the mapping tool that will be able to assist with locating areas that will be allowed and areas that will remain not allowed per the proposed suction dredge mining permit. I am going to open up my screen now to get to that information. Thank you. So the link provided in the public notice is what can be used to access the Suction Dredge Mining Program webpage. You can also get to our Suction Dredge Mining webpage by going to water_programs/NPDES/suction-mining.html. That website will take you to our webpage where information on this proposed suction dredge mining permit will be. If you scroll down on that webpage, underneath announcements are bullets. The 5th bullet is the suction dredge mining application user guide. It's a great tool that can help you with step-by-step instructions on how to utilize the mapping tool. However, the 4th bullet is the draft interactive mapping application, and that will take you to where you can find the mapping tool. Once you click on that link, it will guide you to the mapping tool where initially the splash screen pulls up. This interactive screen here is just an introduction to what the tool was created for, how to utilize the tool, and contact information where you can find me at the Suction Dredge Mining MPDS waterboards.ca.gov email address, where I will answer all your questions and gladly assist with helping you through how to find any locations of interest. Once you click out of that screen, it pulls up the California map. The map initially shows all of the HUC 10 watersheds in California. And each watershed is going to be either filled in at a pale yellow, which represents areas that will remain not allowed per the proposed permit, or green shaded areas where those areas are allowed. The tool also provides at the top a search tool. You can search for section dredge mining locations, either by address, water body, or latitude and longitude coordinates. The first demonstration that I will be showing you is how to utilize the toolbar to locate an area. Over to the left are the plus and minus, zoom in and zoom out tools. If you zoom in the map by using the plus sign, it will become more detailed. And what it's going to show you on the map is what is on the layers list, whatever boxes are checked. So I'm going to demonstrate with my first example, and I'm going to begin to type in, let's say, Folsom Lake. As you can see at the top left dark green bar where it says draft section dredge mining areas application is where you enter in that information. I halfway completed Folsom because I wanted to show you how the tool works. It's a smart tool, so it'll begin to finish off whatever name you're looking for. Under lakes and reservoirs, it's going to show you the information for whatever lake would come up, beginning with the information you're typing. Once you click on Folsom Lake, again, you want to go to the left-hand side and begin to zoom in to get more detailed information of that area. As we zoom in, I'm going to zoom in a little more so everyone can see. The blue highlighted area is outlining Folsom Lake. Once you click on Folsom Lake, a pop-up tool will show up. It's important to notice that around Folsom Lake, all of the area is in a pale yellow shaded area, which means that this is an area that will remain not allowed per the proposed suction dredge mining permit. The pop-up tool here down below where it says 1 of 3 is highlighting all information associated with the left-hand side layers list. The more layers that are turned on related to Folsom Lake will show more pop-up boxes with information. But for now, these are the defaults that show up. At the top of the bar of the pop-up is an arrow. It's a next feature that will continue to provide information about what established prohibitions through the permit, the proposed permit, are related to this water body. For example, it says mercury above standard, and next to it is a yes, which means that yes, Folsom Lake has been found mercury above standard. Also, historic gold mining, it says yes. It's important to note below that CDFW stands for California Department of Fish and Wildlife. It says prohibition. Although it says allowed here, if one or more of the established prohibitions are related to a water body or watershed, per the proposed suction dredge mining permit, that area will remain not allowed. So that is why this water body, although the California Department of Fish and Wildlife has allowed this area, the other criteria has deemed this area to remain not allowed. As we continue on, I want to highlight some of the layer list and the importance of how to use them to gain more information and get more insight on this water body. So if you follow me to the left-hand side of the layer list box, here are some additional features. If I were to turn off the lakes and streams boxes that are currently checked and turn on the lakes and streams of the impaired list, you can see that the entire Folsom Lake is highlighted in red. This is because it is showing up on the impaired water bodies list. If I wanted to zoom out and get a look at what California looks like with the impaired water bodies turned on, I would go to the left-hand side, click on the minus sign and zoom out. And you can see that everywhere where there is yellow pale area is red, meaning that the water bodies are impaired in that area. Additional features that are associated with this mapping tool is, let me turn that off and turn this back on, are beneficial uses. It's important sometimes to know what type of beneficial uses. If that was something you were interested in, you would want to click on that box next to beneficial uses. And when you click on a water body, it will show you the beneficial uses table associated with that water body. For example, cold fresh water habitat. If that was some more information you wanted to understand about that water body and why there's a beneficial use in that water body, you can click on the right-hand side. There's an arrow. You click on that feature and cold fresh water habitat beneficial use information will appear. When you are interested in not having that information up anymore, you want to go back over to the left of the layers list and turn off the beneficial uses. Another important feature of this layers list is under areas not allowed is an arrow next to the checkbox. If you're to click on that arrow, it drops down all of the sub-layers, which are the established prohibitions and also boundaries of the Huckton watershed information. So if you were interested in finding out more information about historic gold mining in a specific area, if it had ever occurred, you'd want to click on that sub-layer, and historic gold mining will appear in a different color. There are additional ways to locate, say for example, you wanted to use the map and you didn't know where you were going and you wanted to use the map to just locate a street information. There are features here called a base map gallery that can change the information in the background of the map. If you were to turn on streets on the base map gallery by using this box with the 4 squares and then making one huge square, you will see that a street map pulls up. In order to go ahead and make these streets, as you can see in the background, it's the transparency is what is making it not as clear. You'd want to go over to the right-hand side of that layer list feature where the 3 dots are and click on that. You click on the 3 dots, it has a transparency feature that you can click on and control how transparent the information is. If you put it to 100% transparent, it will allow you to see more of the street names that may be useful in navigating to what water body it is that you're interested in. An additional way to search for a location of interest is through our latitude and longitude icon tool. So I'm going to set the map back to its default and show you how you can utilize that latitude and longitude to locate an area. I'm going to zoom out again. Down below, right in the middle of the mapping tool, are 4 icons. The third icon, the X, Y, Z icon, is a coordinate locator converter. You'd want to put in this converter under input your latitude and longitude coordinates. If I were to use these coordinates that I already have pre-planned, you can either, after the latitude is entered, either put a space, a comma and a space, or no space, wouldn't matter. But once you enter in the information, you'd want to press enter on your computer and a pin will show up. It's very far away right now, but I'm going to show you how to get closer to that. A great feature about this mapping tool is that you can move the boxes around, the pop-up boxes. The layers list can move, the coordinate can move, so that you can enter in the information and see where exactly it is. If you notice, now that I've moved the box, however, the pin went away. So you'd want to press enter into that input box again to make that pin reappear. And then we're going to go back over to the left-hand side where the plus sign is and zoom in. We have an idea of where it is, but anytime you click out of the map onto another feature of the map, the pin will go away. So you want to go again back to the input coordinator and click that pin. And as we can notice, as we zoom in closer, that the pin is located in a green shaded area. So any water body within this green shaded area is in the proposed allowed suction dredge mining area. For this example, I'm going to use the Hutchinson Creek. Once I've located that, I'm going to exit out of the coordinator box and click on the creek. The creek will highlight blue, just like Folsom Lake did. And again, it's going to provide that information that we're interested in knowing more about the water body, if it's allowed, if it's an allowed area. Unlike the Folsom Lake example, this pop-up box title is areas allowed. So it's showing the difference here that this is an allowed water body. In addition to that, like previous, mercury above standard, where it said yes for Folsom Lake, this is blank. So blank basically means that that was not found in this water body. And because again, the California Department of Fish and Wildlife has allowed this area, this is an area that is allowed. If Hutchinson Creek, was the information you were interested in locating and you wanted to use this map to locate that information, you can go over to the left middle icon down below under the base map gallery that I previously showed and click on print. This print feature will allow you to print exactly what's fitted to the screen. So if the closer you are and the more detailed you'd like the information to be, you'd want to zoom in and then click print. If you were further out and zoomed out, as I initially began at the default stage of the map, then the entire map of California would be printed out. Another great feature is this information widget. The information widget provides the information that was initially on the introductory splash screen, as well as it provides information about the established prohibitions and more about the suction dredge mining, contact information where you can ask your questions as well. And it also provides a hyperlink to our suction dredge mining permit website. I'm just going to go through a few more of the icons and then I will be closing off my demonstration. Down below in the middle is the legend. Depending on the layers list, what is turned on, the legend will describe what color the specific information is. So I showed you the impaired water bodies were red. If I were to click that on to the left here, as you can see on the legend, now lakes and reservoirs for both the impaired water bodies, just regular water bodies are showing. However, the difference is one is red and one is blue. So it will guide you through that information. If I scroll down here, just in case if anyone forgets, it'll show areas that are not allowed are in the pale yellow and areas that will remain allowed, and this is proposed through the permit, in green. Another feature that may assist in looking for locations is the filter tool. You can either filter by lake, filter by stream, or county. If you were to type that information in, it would then direct you to, if, for example, Folsom Lake, if there were multiple Folsom Lakes, it would highlight all of the Folsom Lakes on the map. So be careful of that. If it may be a situation where you'd want to have both the lat long coordinates and the filter tool if you're not, if there is a water body with multiple names of the same name. All right, so thank you. That is the end of my demonstration. I do want to go back really quick to our webpage just to highlight the suction dredge mining application user guide. Everything that I have discussed in today's demonstration can be found on our website in detailed step-by-step instructions The two examples that I used today, both Folsom Lake and the Latitude and Longitude, are within this user guide. So it's a great step-by-step, very detailed tool to walk you through. We've tested it out, and we've gotten great feedback on how people can utilize it. So that's another way that you can also find that information. All of this information, again, is on our webpage, and I want to give that information to you one more time. It's water-issues/programs/MPDS/suction_dredge_mining.html. And thank you everyone for your time. I'm available during the question and answer portion to help search any specific water bodies that you may be interested in finding what area they are in, and answer any questions you have about how to utilize the mapping tool. Thank you.
Thank you, Walter. Can you see my screen?
Yes, we see your screen, Afrooz.
Sorry, I'm having technical issues, it seems like. Just 1 minute. Okay, now that Walter has demonstrated the mapping tool, we are ready to go into a short break. But before we do that, I wanted to bring up this questions and comments slide and show you how to submit your questions on the Zoom chat box. Please enter your question or feedback and indicate either you want to ask your question or if you want staff to read it for you. We will respond to your questions, or we will unmute you to ask your question if you chose to do so. You will be unmuted until you have received the response to your question. If you have technical issues, please send an email to suction_dredge_mining_npdes@waterboards.ca.gov. And now it's time for our short 10-minute break. It's 1:37. It seems like we are ahead of the schedule, so let's get back here at 1:50. Welcome back. I hope you got a chance to stretch and get a drink of water. We will now begin our question and comment session. We haven't received any questions in the Zoom chat box, so Diana sent some messages for you to submit any questions if you have, or we can unmute you to ask your questions.
That's right, Afruz. This is Diana. I don't see anyone asking questions or providing feedback. How about if we give just a couple more minutes to see if there is any interest? And if not, I would suggest we probably continue with your presentation.
That sounds good, Diana. Thank you.
Okay. So first, this is Diana again. I thought I just saw a chat pop up from Mr. Buckley, but I don't actually see it. Gergagan, behind the scenes, can you assist? Is someone seeing a chat message that I'm not seeing?
I'm currently seeing nothing on my end, but I will try to unmute Mr.
Hmm.
Buckley and see if he did have a comment to say.
Okay, maybe it flashed up because he was leaving the meeting. So let me go ahead and check that. Yes, it was. Oh, no, he's still there.
Yeah, I'm not sure how the technology is working here because my guess is there are many others who also have questions, and I was trying to be respectful. So I have one quick question, and it may lead to a number of questions from others. So that was a very helpful presentation, and Walter did a very nice job of being organized and presenting clearly. So you get bonus points for that because many webinars don't have that sort of clarity. My question is this: in areas allowed, when I click down and it shows a subtopic of HUC 10 where no criteria cause prohibition. So basically areas allowed where when the prohibitions are not clear, there's not a reason not to allow suction dredging. But what might be helpful at some point would be for you either on your website or in this session today to describe what those criteria are, because the limited criteria shown in the layer list doesn't seem to be the logical list of things you would consider. Quick example, you have a mapped area that shows to the east of Hetch Hetchy Reservoir, Rancheria Creek is open as a green area that will be allowed for suction dredging to take place. But A, it's in Yosemite National Park. B, it's in wilderness. C, it's upstream from Hetch Hetchy Reservoir, which because they've done water testing there that I've actually had, I've been involved with to a limited degree, that it's a reservoir that's contaminated with mercury. So showing Rancheria Creek as a green mapped area, as an area allowed, obviously isn't applying criteria because it's illegal to do suction dredging in a wilderness or in a national park. So it appears that not all the logical criteria was applied. And the second, just quick example that ties back to the question of criterias. So your map shows in Yosemite Valley, at the east end of Yosemite Valley, where near Mirror Lake and where the two tributaries are coming in for the Merced River, those areas are open for suction dredging when obviously there's no intent by the State Water Board for there to be suction dredging in a national park, in a iconic wild and scenic, which was another question, were wild and scenic rivers identified as areas that would not be appropriate for suction dredging, et cetera. So if someone could provide either now or on your website a list of the criteria that you used to identify which areas are areas allowed, that could be helpful because then our comments could be responsive to seeing whether that criteria seem to make sense, or because our center's been involved in this issue for 11 years now, whether we might have reasons why you would not have certain areas designated as areas allowed. So thank you.
Yes, thank you, John. I'd like to use this time, Walter and Renan. Walter, if you can pull up the tool, and John, if once Walter has the tool up, you can repeat those water bodies you were referring to, because we'd like to see exactly what you are saying.
Sure.
Thank you.
Thank you, Diana. I have the tool pulled up here, John. And so
we scroll down to San Joaquin County and then to the east over to Tuolumne County.
okay.
And you enter in and you drag to this just a little bit more to the east. And the first one there is, if you can see to the right of your cursor, keep going right there. Yeah. So that one is Rancheria Creek.
Okay.
It's right above Hetch Hetchy Reservoir, which if you turn on your mercury impaired layer list, you'll see, nope, up high, way up high, your mercury impaired. It's up.
Oh, the impaired water bodies.
Yep, impaired water bodies. You can see that Hetch Hetchy is indeed impaired for mercury in brown trout in particular, but not so much in the rainbow trout. But why would a water 10 inside Yosemite National Park, inside a wilderness, be shown as an area allowed? So that's just an example, and maybe that's why we are supposed to comment.
Yes, Renan, are you there? Because otherwise I will go ahead and try to answer, but I think you probably have a more detailed answer.
Right. I just wanted to clarify the criteria that we use. I don't think wilderness areas were considered. That would be something that we should be included in the comments submitted so we can then evaluate that and consider that as an additional criteria.
So just a quick comment, and I know this is to answer questions and not to take comments, but when there's a legal reason, such as wilderness has a legal requirement against motorized equipment, it would seem logical that the state would look at legal requirements as one criteria to consider, rather than you need to have a comment to follow the law. That would require someone to look at a particular area and identify for you, yep, the law says you can't have motorized equipment in a wilderness. It would seem that you would know that. So again, thank you. That helps me to understand that wilderness is not at this point a criteria that was considered.
Right. And Mr. Buckley, it's we welcome your comment right now during this workshop, and it's a very good comment. We will look into on why we did not look at wilderness, if it was either an oversight or if perhaps that may not be a water board's jurisdiction. In fact, and Caitlin, I do see your hand up. Thank you. Ryan, I'd like to ask you a question, if you can join us. Do you know if it's possible that the water board may not have the jurisdiction to make a decision based on wilderness?
Excuse me, sorry. I don't know off the top of my head. I'd be interested to see a comment based on it. What I can say, and I think this is essentially what has been said already is that the criteria the water board considered were those that were essentially directly under their authority. Our authority, impairments, water quality, other water quality considerations. So while we have attempted to incorporate CDFW, Department of Fish and Wildlife, prohibitions on their regulations, there are other laws and regulations that apply to that, that may apply to these activities that aren't necessarily reflected in our permitting action. And if that's, so, we would definitely welcome comments on that. So if appropriate, we can incorporate them into the map, because we are, by incorporating at least the CDFW regulations, trying to make this as comprehensive a tool as possible. But that'll have to be evaluated on the basis of what exactly the prohibitions are and where they're derived from.
Yes, and I do see this issue here as you're bringing this up, Mr. Buckley, is that the water boards and possibly DFW may issue a permit to mine where there's another agency that for another basis would not allow that mining. So thank you. I want to tell everyone before I call on Caitlin that you are allowed to unmute yourself. Since we have such a small group, we figure that this is manageable. And as Caitlin raised her hand, that was great. So Caitlin, would you like to go ahead and speak?
Yeah, sure. I just kind of wanted to piggyback off of what John said. When you guys are thinking about your criteria, I was wondering if you have taken into account areas that overlay or are in close proximity to wild and scenic rivers, which have extra protections also, just like wilderness areas, national parks. So I wasn't sure if you guys included that or not, but yeah, I just wanted to raise that for you guys.
Wonderful, thank you. We have that all noted. And as we have this noted from you verbally, please make sure you include those in your written comments. John, yes.
Just a further question. And again, if you didn't need to look at the second example, that's fine. If you did want to look, it's just to the southeast of where Walter now is showing on the map. It's if you look, it's Tuolumne Meadows. Let's see, if you back the green area below Mariposa, so right there, that's
Okay.
Yosemite Valley. And again, it was an area that obviously would not make logical sense. The National Park Service, as I believe Diane just shared, would have prohibitions that would prevent that. So it would seem counterintuitive for the state to provide a permit for an activity, knowing that it's within a national park, which prohibits that activity. But just back to a question, I believe Caitlin brought up the question of, and I didn't hear an answer, if something's not shown at this point on your layer list, does that mean that we should, if we want to discuss the tool, not whether or not it's appropriate for where mining should take place, but if how the tool could be helpful, would a comment specifying what additional criteria may be appropriate for consideration, is that the kind of comment that you would like now, or just wait until our final comments and complain that it didn't have the right stuff and wished you'd had it earlier? So what?
Yes. Actually, we want this tool to be expanded as much as it is helpful. We are stressing that this tool is guidance. It's not the permit itself. And so as I'm listening to both your comments, if there is another electronic layer available within the states, or that's available to us that we can incorporate to show additional information, that would be extremely helpful. One of the things we do not want is for a miner to go through the complete permitting application process, pay their fees, get a permit, get 2 permits, one from us and one from DFW, if they are ultimately not allowed to mine. So I do want to encourage our staff and you and anyone out there that knows if there's information that's either already electronically layered or that is not difficult to create a new layer, that we would want to pull that in.
And just in case this is part of your question too, I think we'd appreciate receiving whether it's a comment on what the permit should allow or not allow, or what the mapping tool should incorporate, i.e. something outside of the permit maybe. I think both of those things would be welcome in comments, in written comments for the comment period.
That's correct. I want to clarify a couple things, and I may be repeating myself. And then, John, I'm going to call on you again since you have your hand up. The draft statewide permits, that is the proposed item go in front of the State Water Board in the future, or proposed to go in front of the State Water Board in the future for their consideration of adoption. We currently have a draft permit. The current draft permit will be modified based on written public comments. So it's critical that any comments you have on the permit, on the draft permit, was either raised during the official public hearing, which we had back in August, or is in written comments. Now, when it comes to the map, as Ryan was stating, the map is to mirror the draft permits right now in draft and eventually as it gets adopted. This is guidance. This is not going to be an item that goes in front of the board for adoption. So that gives us additional leeway as staff to the water board and staff of other agencies and interested parties that have further confirmed information that we can pull into this tool to provide a comprehensive set of information that will be helpful to miners and all interested parties. So with that, yes, John.
Yeah, a last question, because again, I know there's others on this. So when you have a criteria, a layer list, an example that has to do with historic gold mining in California, or there's another name for it. I just was looking at it during the break, but a historic gold mining district or something like that. There's one that says historic gold mining location, but there's another one for areas not allowed that, yeah, whether it's historic gold mining, Hub 10 or whatever it might be. I'm a little confused again, because across the foothills, and I know I was looking at one there in Mariposa County, which is to the southwest of the town of Mariposa, which is now where Walter has the map. If it was down and to the left, it's an area that's a large green open area. If you go to the west, southwest, okay, so stop just a second and it should show up still to the left. It's just in the bottom corner. It's that one right there, the one right there. I think they call that one Dutchman Creek or whatever. So if people are aware of the area around Mariposa, all of the foothill areas below Mariposa had extensive gold mining. It doesn't mean they were all successful, but there was gold mining all across the areas to the south, to the west, and to the northwest of Mariposa. And in fact, that's why they feature it so much in their tourism. The question is, why would a particular stream drainage like Dutchman Creek not be shown as an historic gold mining district or a Huck 10 historic gold mining when almost certainly there was a high level of gold mining that took place along Dutchman Creek, if you just think of the name of it, tied to, people looking for gold, the Dutch, whoever. But is there a clear understanding of why certain areas that would appear to be in historic gold mining districts may not show up as actually being precluded from areas allowed. If there was just helpful information that could give us ideas on how to comment. Thank you.
Sure. And the response to that is that there's not a clear understanding that we did not have that information in our database that created these layers. And so you have a wealth of information, John, and because you know our state so well, I would welcome that we do somehow gather a lot of your knowledge you have to actually, so that we can look at the data and the basis and hopefully correct any voids of information that we have that we created these maps from. And thank you. I see you chatted. Thank you. All right. That was really good. Yes, go ahead.
I was wondering if Walter can search for Dutchman Creek on the map to see what it shows.
Okay.
Hi, Afruz. I have Dutchman Creek open now. That's what's highlighted on the map in the blue. I was thinking of turning on the gold mining location to see if we notice here with the gold mining location, it's highlighting each dot here represents the information that we found on gold mining, and there aren't any within this area of the Huck 10 watershed, and that is why this area specifically is green and everything surrounding it is in the pale yellow. Even when this dot may have looked like it was on the cusp, but once you zoom in further, it's not. So you can get really detailed in where the gold mining locations are that we have information for. But yes, John, I think additional information is great because we can input that into the map if we have latitude, longitude information.
This is Caitlin here. I wanted to speak to that. If you go down on the layer list and you select the Huck 10 historical mining, it pops up in a dark yellow, which I perceived as being areas that had been known for where mining occurred. If that's not true, then maybe that should be relabeled, but it shows that all of these dark yellow areas have historical mining, but for some reason, no idea why that specific polygon and that exact shape is the only section that quote unquote wasn't mined. If you unclick the areas allowed, you'll see like a perfect white shape. I find that pretty hard to believe, as you know, John stated before, that area is known to have a lot of historical mining there. So I don't know what the story is with that, but maybe you guys could check in on that.
Yeah, how the mapping tool works is that that's why there's two of the historic gold mining, because initially each dot is a latitude, longitude location. And if one dot representing a historic gold mining was within that watershed, it would turn the entire watershed this dark yellow. And as we can see, when I turned off areas allowed, there just isn't any gold mining in that specific area.
Perfect, thank you. That's very helpful.
Yes.
Before we go on that, Dory has a comment, and Afruz, I don't know if you had included Dory in including our staff. So we have Dory Bellum here, and she's one of our geologists with the board. And Dory, you had further feedback you wanted to share?
Yeah, so when constructing this web mapping application, for any of the criteria that were actual points, actual XY locations, The way to then convert them into a spatial area, the Water Board chose HUC 10s. And if you're familiar with these watershed delineations, there's different ways that you can delineate the state into different size watersheds. HUC 10s are what were used in this tool. So when you see something under the areas not allowed and it lists all the criteria that we used, if it says HUC 10 : historic gold mining location, this is the HUC 10 that combines or contains any of those locations that were points of historic gold mining. I included that extra layer that just includes the points so the user could actually see these are the points. And then you could, excuse me, highlight the polygon, the HUC 10 that contains that point. This also occurs with any samples for mercury or metals that are along the water bodies themselves. If that was then above the standard or in the impaired water bodies list, that whole HUC 10 is then selected.
Thank you, Dory. So what I think I'm hearing from this entire conversation is that there needs to be further examination on two items. One is wilderness area and national parks. And the second is potential unidentified locations of historic mining activity. And one thing that comes to mind as I listen to your feedback and questions, and I'm looking exactly at that green spot in the middle of our screen, is that if there is that activity all around that water body and that watershed, and of course the shape of the watershed and the change in elevations, there's probably a high probability that gold mining activity had taken place in that watershed. So, so I think Caitlin had something more that she was chatting. Caitlin, did you have something more you wanted to add?
Oh, you just had mentioned looking into wilderness and national park areas.
Okay.
So I was just adding in also the wild and scenic designations of rivers.
Wonderful. Good. Thank you. And I like the way we've been able to open up this conversation. For anyone else, please feel free to either raise your hand or prepare to speak. In the meantime, I do want to read off a comment that we received from our email. And let's see, the question and comment is from Mr. Jonathan Evans. And here it is. Where there are areas that are listed as areas allowed for suction dredge mining on the map, but are closed to suction dredge mining for other reasons, will the maps be revised or clarified in the permit process to avoid confusion and conflicting authority? So before I read on to the example, I think the answer is going to have to be yes. We have experts on this call right now, and there's confusion. And these maps are going to be used by people of different levels of technical expertise, mining expertise, suction dredge mining experience, and so forth. So this draft tool is still wide open for improvements. Okay, and then for example, there appears to be federal wilderness areas, national parks, and state parks listed as areas allowed for mining. Yes, I think that we are hearing clearly that that's one of our next steps that we need to start exploring. And as staff, we will start exploring that even before the March 8th close of comment due dates, since this is a guidance and we can expand this guidance out even further than the permit itself, if that is useful information. All right, and then Jonathan's last question is, how does the State Water Board permit process plan to reflect conflicting mining allowances? So I read that as conflicting mining allowances between DFW and the Water Board and other agencies. I will start answering that question. So we are here today with the State Water Board with the forthcoming plans for the State Water Board to consider adopting this permit. And this is all because of Senate Bill 637. So Senate Bill 637 basically coupled the Water Board and the Department of Fish and Wildlife together and mandated that prior to a minor obtaining a Department of Fish and Wildlife permit, that they obtain some kind of correspondence or permits from the Water Board. So that Senate bill has been very helpful in making sure that the department and the Water Board, that we coordinate closely. Obviously now we are hearing that there's other departments that it's critical that we coordinate. So to answer your question, and Ryan, our attorney, can add anything I miss. It's critical that in our NPDES permits that the Water Board stays within its authority. And the Water Board may or may not have the authority to state that mining is not allowed in areas under a different agency's authority. So I will allow Ryan to repeat what he had stated before and then expand on it if necessary.
Yeah.
However, this mining tool can very well be a collection of collective collaboration by various agencies that has information and can also communicate to users of this, especially the miners, that there are these other areas that you still may not be able to mine because of other agency authorities. Okay, thank you, Ryan, for speaking on this.
No problem. I think you pretty much covered it, but I'll just reiterate a bit that, what Diana said is correct, that the permit that the staff here has developed and that the board is going to consider and that you'll submit comments on is an NPDES permit. And under that, what we're considering is one, the requirements of Senate Bill 637 in 2015, which gives us certain criteria to look at in considering whether or not lifting the prohibition that the legislature placed is appropriate. And what in that permitting process, what we've primarily looked at, because it's under our authority, is just impacts on water, existing Water Board designations for impairments, water quality impacts generally, et cetera. Those are the things that are listed in the permit and that this tool primarily reflects. And as Diana said, because of Senate Bill 637 and the coordination that requires between the State Board and the Department of Fish and Wildlife, we've also taken steps to make sure that this map reflects Department of Fish and Wildlife regulations, since the legislation requires our permit and their permit to work in tandem somewhat. Again, there may be, there are other agencies, the department, federal agencies, Forest Service, things like that, that may have other regulations or other laws that apply to activities that can take place, for example, in national parks. And, as I said earlier, I think we'd welcome comments on how to address those both in the permit, so we can consider whether or not it's appropriate to address those in the permit itself. And second, whether it's appropriate to address them in this mapping tool.
Mm-hmm. And so with that, there is a comment from John Buckley, which I will read off in the chat box. But before I do so, I do want to say this just as one of the regulatory managers at the Water Board. If you are, if you out in the audience right now, or if you know of others, you are staff of other agencies in which it would be helpful or it is critical that this mapping tool designates areas that are prohibited by your agency, please contact us either through the section dredge mining NPDES at waterboards.ca.gov email address, or directly to Afruz Farsimadan or myself, Diana Messina, or any of us staff, because we definitely want to meet up with you and make sure that we address this on the mapping tool with any information you may have. All right, so with that, I'm going to read this last comment from John, and it doesn't have to be the last. John, if you have more comments or questions, please chime in. This has been very helpful. It leads to a better understanding of the map, but it also underscores that if suction dredging may be allowed in areas shown as green on the map, that the mapped areas not allowed mining to violate the Water Board's mission to preserve, enhance, and restore water quality and aquatic resources. That would seem to mean that you would need to identify map criteria for river segments with endangered aquatic species or locations above community water supply intakes and other public benefit values. Absolutely. And that's a very good comment. As our NPDES permits that our board adopts, and all of our waste discharge requirements are for one of the primary purposes of protecting beneficial uses of our surface waters, as well as our groundwaters. So thank you for that comment, John. All right. So I don't see other comments in the chat. We have a small group. If anyone wants to unmute themselves and speak, you're welcome to do so. Okay, and while you're thinking about it, or before maybe we continue on with the presentation, I do want to again say pretty clearly that we can construct any GIS layer from information that comes to us. We would have to have a thorough understanding as water board staff that what the source of the information is, and that the information is valid. And then we can go forward and evaluate if we have the staff resources to put a very detailed layer, or maybe a layer of information that is not as detailed, but does address the needs of this map. All right. So with that, Afruz, I'm not hearing anyone else. So why don't we go ahead with your slides, and if we do get any further comments, we'll make sure and address them.
Perfect. Thanks, Diana. I just have one more slide that talks about the next steps for this permitting process. And after that, I will just thank you, all of you, and the workshop will be finished. I just want to thank you all again for your questions and feedback. That's very helpful for us to hear your feedback. One purpose of this workshop was just for that, to hear your comments on how to improve this mapping tool, since it's a draft mapping tool. Now I will go over the next steps for the draft suction dredge mining NPDES permit. We will have another workshop similar to today's on January 28th from 9 a.m. to 12 p.m. The end of the public comment period is noon on March 8th of this year. So please make sure that you provide all your comments that you talked about today in writing by that comment due date. After that, we will consider all of the comments, and the State Water Board will have a meeting to consider the adoption of the draft permit that we will anticipate will be in 2021. And with that, once,
Yes, I see a comment. Thank you. Okay, so can you repeat the purpose of the January 28th workshop webinar? Afruz, can you repeat that?
yes, the January 28th workshop will be exactly the same format of this workshop, and we thought some people may not be able to participate in this workshop, so we are scheduling another one. But it will be exactly the same. We will demonstrate the mapping tool, and we will have questions and comment session for people to ask questions and provide feedback.
Okay, great. And Caitlin, I see your hand up. Go ahead.
Yeah, I had actually one more question about the mapping tool.
Sure.
It probably would be helpful if we can view that right now.
Sure. Walter, you want to go ahead and pull it up again?
Yes, I just pulled it back up.
Okay, so when we look at the layer that shows like the allowed polygons, and then also the layer that is the CDFA additional restrictions.
Okay.
Yeah, so there could be a discrepancy here between these two layers because they could be interpreted at two different ways. One being that the special restrictions layer with all the colors is showing that like quote unquote even more area would be open to suction dredging, which could be really confusing. And then the other one is that it's more of an informational layer that is showing within those allowed polygons the timing that those areas would be allowed to be suction dredged. So I think what could help with interpretation for that is if it's possible that those colored sections are actually like cut out to match the polygon shapes, and then those polygons can change color according to the restrictions, if that makes sense.
Caitlin, can you rephrase that last part a little differently? Just
Yeah.
to hear it again, because
Yeah.
it's quite absorbed to me yet.
Sure. Yeah, it just seems like these areas and the colors for the additional restrictions are very big, and it almost could be interpreted that those areas are also open to suction dredging. And so I was thinking for better interpretation of these two layers together, those sections could be, instead of being like that big area covering all of Merced, you just have that yellow overlaying with those polygons, just to define the restrictions just on the allowed areas more.
Right, I see what you're saying, to make sure that the other colors are not interpreted as allowed to be mined simply because they're not pale yellow.
Yeah, correct. Yeah.
Okay. All right, that's a good catch. Thank you. You're welcome. All right, let's see what else we have here. Okay, so I do not see any more comments. Anyone else have any other comments they'd like to share? Okay. I just, on behalf of all of our staff, I want to thank you, whether you're participating and just listening, or for those of you that spoke. And definitely please take up our invitation. If you're with an agency, or if you do have information that's a confirmed source of information that we may want to consider for this map. It's going to take a while if we do consider creating a new layer. So probably the earlier we start addressing any additional information from other agencies, the better. All right, Afruz, was there anything more?
That was all. We can close the workshop now, but I wanted to thank you again for your participation. And if you're aware of other interested parties that have not subscribed to our statewide email system, please pass this information on to them, because we will be providing updates through our Lyris email system, which you can find all of the information on our program webpage. Thank you.
Wonderful. Bye-bye.
Bye.